Hi, welcome everyone. We're just going to give a couple of minutes while we have other people join in. So just there are just 1 or 2 more minutes so we could have more people join in the webinar. Thank you for joining us this evening. Thank you. Okay, welcome and thank you for joining us for Senator Brooks' webinar, New York Senate District 8, End of Session 2021 Virtual Town Hall. This evening, as we discuss 2021 legislative accomplishments and 2022 legislative priorities for next session. My name is Lucia Martinez. I am the Director of Constituent Services for Senator Brooks. This evening, we will be sharing the different summer programs and different accomplishments throughout the whole year that the Senator Brooks has accomplished during this year. So we are really grateful for you to join us today. Thank you and welcome. Again, thank you for being with us this evening. At this moment, we are offering live translations. Shortly, you will see an activation of the Zoom interpretation features and you will see a button pop up on your screen. If you would like to hear this event in Spanish, click on the interpretation button and choose Spanish. If you would like to hear this event in English, you do not have to click on any options. Estamos ofreciendo traducciones para este evento. En breve activaremos las funciones de interpretación de Zoom y verá un botón emergente en su pantalla. Si desea escuchar este evento en español, haga clic en el botón de interpretación y elija español. Si quiere escuchar este evento en inglés, no es necesario que haga nada. Tenemos diferentes opciones. Como usted verá, tenemos el chat. Para que usted van a ver los enlaces y también pueden levantar su mano si no pueden escuchar nada o están teniendo dificultad con el video. Y tenemos una sección de Q y A para si tiene preguntas. You will notice that we have 3 settings to chat. We will be putting links in that section. And if you're having difficulties with any audio or video, you could please raise your hand and you could use the Q&A selection to just enter your questions that you have. We will be addressing all the questions at the end of the presentation. At this moment, it is my privilege and my honor to introduce to you Senator Brooks' staff. Myself, Lucia Martinez, Director of Constituent Services. We also have Joe Agavino. He's the Director of Communications. Melody Jansa, she is an External Relation Associate. Mason Leonard, he's a Policy Analyst. Michael Reed, Chief of Staff. Francis Palasieski, Legislative Director. Anthony Harrison, Constituent Services. Jennifer Jakaran, District Office Director. Joni Olmsted, she's an External Relation Associate. And Michelle Jensen, she is the Director of Albany Operation. Thank you everybody for being here today. It is a privilege to be in front, in front of this wonderful group of colleagues. If you notice, we also have the links and Senator Brooks' phone number. Senator Brooks right now is live on Facebook. Please, you could watch this presentation there if you get a chance, and you could call the office if you have any concerns or issues. But it is my privilege at this moment to introduce to you Senator John Brooks. Thank you, Senator Brooks, for really making this available for the community, for all your support, and really making this important webinar available to all your constituents. Welcome, Senator Brooks. Thank you.
Thank you, Lucia. Good evening, everybody. We have a very full agenda for you tonight. We're going to cover everything from legislative activity to the budget to funding that we secured for the district, various community programs that we are hosting or have worked on, information on webinars that we've been using, upcoming events, and then at the end, we're going to discuss some critical issues for the future. I'm blessed with a very outstanding staff, and I've elected to have the staff members participate in the program by addressing some of the programs they have been most responsible for. We did give many people an opportunity to submit some questions, which they've already come in. We'll be discussing those before I talk about the critical issues. And then following the discussion on the critical issues, we will allow additional questions to be asked. The one thing I would ask, if a concern that you have on the questions is more a personal issue, please put the information in the text, just that there's an issue that you need to talk to, and we'll call you. We do have a number of people on the program tonight. I think, if we have a widespread issue, we'll make that part of the discussion. If there's an individual issue, we'll address that with you individually. So I will turn this back to Lucia and Melanie, and I hope you find this information both very interesting and giving you a good idea of how broad the issues are and the activities we've addressed in the past year. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Brooks. At this moment, I would like to introduce to you. I'm just going to make sure we have the presentation from the beginning. So it is my privilege really to introduce to you Senator Brooks' Legislative Director, Francis. Francis, thank you for being here. Francis, this evening, he will be presenting an overview of the 2021 session. Francis, I'll turn it over to you. Thank you.
Thank you, Lucia. Good evening, everyone. My name is Francis Palczewski, and I'm joining you today from beautiful Albany, where it's been raining for 3 weeks straight. I'm going to give you a brief overview of the Senator's legislative accomplishments this session. And later on, you'll hear from the Senator himself, who will discuss some of the key pieces of legislation. So if I leave some out, it's probably because I'm leaving the good ones for him. In this last session, the Senator had a very active legislative agenda. He introduced over 100 bills, with more than 50 of them being new pieces of legislation that were drafted during the session. In Albany, the Senator chairs the Senate Standing Committee on Veterans, Homeland Security, and Military Affairs, where he works closely with stakeholders such as the New York State Council of Veterans Organizations, the United States Department of Defense, the Division of Veterans Services, and many others. Through a collaborative effort with these key stakeholders and the Senator's background being a veteran firefighter and risk manager himself, most of his legislation focuses on issues pertaining to his committee. This year, the Senator was able to see the passage of many pieces of legislation through both houses of the legislature, particularly in areas dealing with veterans, Homeland Security, and military affairs. Next slide, please. This slide shows you some of the Senator's top legislative accomplishments relating to his committee. I'm not going to go through all of them, but I'll highlight a few. The first one I'd like to talk about is Senate Bill 2036. This one really affects two of the main topics of the Veterans Committee dealing with veteran suicide. It remains a top priority for the Senator, and while one of his much heralded programs that is expanded across the state, the peer-to-peer Dwyer program, proves to be highly successful in the veteran community at addressing a myriad of mental health issues. There still is there's a growing need for additional mental health services and improved reporting on veteran suicide. Reports indicate that the veteran community remains an outlier in regards to rates of suicide. The state suicide prevention task force found issues with data reporting, and which led to inaccurate, incomplete records concerning suicide, veteran suicides. This bill, when it's signed into law, will greatly improve the reporting system when there's believed to be a suicide by a veteran. Another great bill the Senator sponsored this year, which languished in the Senate and the Assembly for many years, was Senate Bill 4719. This bill deals with paid leave for the Civil Air Patrol. The Civil Air Patrol is a little-known organization that is actually an auxiliary of the United States Air Force. It was originally founded in World War II, during which time its primary mission was to patrol our shorelines. Today, the Civil Air Patrol engages in a myriad of different missions, many of which are search and rescue. This bill would allow members of the Civil Air Patrol who are public employees paid leave while they're on orders during a state of emergency. The reason why this bill is important is because the Civil Air Patrol is an entirely volunteer organization. So a lot of these volunteers, when they're given orders and being an official branch of the military technically, they have to leave work without pay to execute those orders. And usually they're during a state of emergency. Next slide, please. This next slide kind of is just an overview of other bills that passed both houses the senator worked on. I think the most important one here is the Nassau County Water Authority. This bill, when it's signed into law, is going to enable the public takeover of the New York American Water. You'll hear more about this one from the senator later on. Next slide, please. A key piece of legislation the senator got through this year was Senate Bill 7152. This bill deals with guns that look like toys. It's common sense gun safety reform that enjoys broad support from law enforcement and community organizations alike. When this bill is signed into law, it will no longer be legal for manufacturers to produce real guns that look like toys, or for gun owners to modify their guns to look like toys. Here you can see a few examples of actual guns that the police came across that were modified or manufactured to look like a toy. Next slide, please. The next bill that I'd like to discuss that I think was key to the senator's agenda this year was Senate Bill 5543, dealing with the Merit Scholarship. The Merit Scholarship currently provides financial assistance to the children and spouses of Gold Star families, which are families that have had a family member killed in action or grievously wounded. However, the scholarship as it currently stands is not entirely inclusive and only covers the families of those who have served after 1990. The senator's bill here, when it's signed into law, is going to remove that arbitrary date, allowing any Gold Star family, or any Gold Star family to attain these benefits. The senator's identified next year that he'd like to continue working on the Merit Scholarship to further improve it. Taking a look at the Cal Vets program in California, which is a much larger program serving Gold Star families and just families of veterans in general, providing them tuition assistance. Next slide, please. Another important bill the senator got across the finish line this year is Senate Bill 1383. It deals with fire sprinklers. This bill is going to require that prospective home buyers of new construction are provided a cost estimate to have a fire sprinkler system installed during construction. This bill is important because today's modern day homes and furnishings burn much quicker because of the petroleum-based products they are manufactured with. This often leads to buildings becoming engulfed in flames in only a matter of minutes. The price of a fire sprinkler system can be surprisingly reasonable when it is installed during the initial construction of a home, and in the event of emergency can prevent catastrophe by putting out a fire before it begins to rage out of control and reducing the risk of dying in a home fire. As you can see here from the graphic, it kind of demonstrates, as soon as the fire starts and it's detected, the sprinkler can either put it down or not, or actually put it out. And today's fire sprinkler systems in the homes are usually not invasive. They pop out of the wall and they have detection equipment, so they only engage in the room that's actually burning. Next slide, please. So those were just some of the top priorities that good bills the senator got through this year that I wanted to discuss. Later on, you're going to hear from the senator himself, who's going to discuss his top priorities for the next session coming up in 2022. And here are the main topics that he's looking to address. And I'm going to actually leave the details of that up to him. And that's all I have to present for today. Thank you.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Francis, for really going over all this important key legislations that were passed through this year. So thank you again. Next, we have Joni. Joni is the External Relation Associates, and Joni this evening will be presenting the funding for District 8. Joni, thank you for being here and welcome.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Joni Omesti, and I try to put the fun in funding. Our office tries to make it easy for organizations to receive their funding, and the senator allocates and brings in from the state for fiscal year 2021, $7.1 million. So we started with school districts at the amount of 2.1 million. And some of the highlights were the Wyandanch school system is not hooked up to their sewer system. So we put a funding towards getting that done. And also for all the school districts in the area, we had started funding different classroom upgrades, and then the pandemic hit. So we switched midstream to get children hooked up for distance learning, and when they got back to school for health and safety issues, we were able to get funding for that. So the next one would be fire districts, where the senator was able to secure 2.9 million. And some of the highlights for that was the Wantagh Fireboat, which is 20 years old. And they're called in for emergencies, for disasters, and they're always responsive, and they needed a new boat. So between the state and Department of Homeland Security, we were able to get them funding for a new boat. For the rest of the fire districts, we are able to give funding for upgrades, for safety equipment, thermal imaging cameras, disaster emergency generators, extrication, the Jaws of Life, you may have heard of, and ventilation equipment for our firefighters' safety, so they can in turn help other people and save other people. For Nassau and Suffolk police departments and Freeport and Amityville, we were able to get funding for vehicle upgrades, technical upgrades, and license plate readers to help them with their jobs. Libraries, we secured $600,000, and that's mostly for technology upgrades and Wi-Fi. Many of the older libraries did not have Wi-Fi systems, so we were able to provide them funding for Wi-Fi program and learning enhancements, including STEM and STEAM for children. And then kind of miscellaneous funding, almost $1 million, $950,000 for the Seaford Little Leagues, enhancements to the park and upgrades to the fields. SUNY Farmingdale, upgrades to their campus security, and village capital improvements, including flood mitigation, solar technology, and as they turn over to electric vehicles, we were able to provide funding for those uses. Fiscal year, the next upcoming year, funding for District 8. We are working on funding for gun violence prevention programs. We're working on legal assistance agencies to help veterans, immigrants, women, and children. We've put aside funding for Alzheimer's disease research. The senator was able to secure funding for emergency preparedness and response capabilities for Nassau and Suffolk counties. Additional funding for capital improvements for schools and fire districts. And throughout the year, other funding streams prevent themselves, and then we're always in contact with who they're appointed to, so we could get them their funding efficiently. And the next slide, please. Thank you. And then additional funding we were able to secure for the state, the senator was able to secure from the state, was what you see listed here, which is $2,500 for the Ivy Foundation, which is a not-for-profit foundation started by Alpha Kappa, their sorority, and they do community service work. $50,000 for the Long Island Gay and Lesbian Youth Incorporation for education programs. $60,000 for school-based Long Island health centers. $3 million, and then an additional $500,000 for the Long Island pre-K initiatives. $175,000 for the Wyandanch School Monitor. And then under that, you see veterans, and Francis had mentioned the Dwyer peer-to-peer services, the program. So the senator was able to secure $4.5 million statewide for the veterans, and additional for Nassau and Suffolk counties, $185,000 each. And then for the energy and environment, we were already able to get $10,000 for Operation Splash, which is a waterfront cleanup, all volunteer program that cleans the waterfront in Freeport. So thank you very much, and that's what I have.
Wonderful. Thank you so much,
Thank you.
Joni. Wonderful presentation. And thank you, Senator, for really securing all this fundings for, the schools, the fire departments, the police and libraries, that it's very necessary. So thank you again. And at this moment, I would like to welcome Jennifer. Jennifer is the district office director for Senator Brooks' office. And she will be talking about community outreach services. Jen, thank you and welcome.
Sorry about that. Yeah, thank you, Lucia. So I'm gonna highlight some community outreach services.
Jen, you sound very low.
Oh no.
Maybe get closer to the microphone.
How's that? Is that better?
Much better, yes.
Okay. So I'm gonna highlight some community service outreach that Senator Brooks has done over the course of the past year. During the initial stage of the pandemic, people had many concerns about, they had many questions and concerns. In particular, unemployment was one of them, and our office played an integral part in connecting hundreds of constituents to the Department of Labor. Also, Senator Brooks recognizes individuals and organizations for their dedication and contribution to the community. This past year, Senator Brooks has honored hundreds of individuals, businesses, and organizations for their accomplishments and service to our community with proclamations and special awards. Also, Senator Brooks, he believes that youths are stakeholders in our community, and he is a strong supporter of leadership and development. So he offers an opportunity through his internship program for youths to develop skills that is needed to effectively operate in the workplace environment. So in the past year, we had over 20 plus interns from colleges and high schools. So the interns gain experience by engaging with constituents and participating in the day-to-day activities of the operations in the district office. They also have opportunities to attend events with the senators and press conferences. So it's a pretty unique opportunity. If anyone is interested in the program, you can please feel free to email me. I think my email is on the slide. Also, if you have any questions or concerns, you can always feel free to reach out. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you very much, Jen. Again, unemployment was a very big, issue that we had during the pandemic. And thank God that, we had hands-on that we were able to help all these constituents. So thank you, Jen. At this moment, I would like to introduce to you Mason Leonard. He's policy analysis and constituent services. And we have Anthony Harrison, constituent services and veterans coordinator. They will be talking a little bit about the constituent services that the senator's office provides. So welcome, both of you. Mason.
Thank you. So my name is Mason Leonard. There's a few things that I do for the senator, but one of the big ones is definitely constituent services. The best way to describe it is that people often don't really know where to turn to solve a problem, especially when it has to do with the government or some form of assistance that they're getting. So, they'll call our office and then we try to connect them with the right department of the state government that could handle their issue. Or if it's not really a state problem, there's like other forms of assistance available, such as like lawyer referral services from the bar associations or various like rental and mortgage assistance programs, just to, name a couple examples. So some of the issues that like I've worked on personally at the office, just to give you some idea, a big one's Hurricane Sandy relief, utility or New York American water issues, like I said, rental and mortgage assistance, COVID concerns, vaccine appointments, and then a lot of things that don't really neatly fit into a category. We just try to help people figure out, how to solve the problem that they're facing right now. So, the bottom line is we're here to help. We do have a team of people that try to work directly with constituents to just directly help them on an individual level. And as we alluded to before, you can contact us if you have an individual problem, and we'll try our best to either resolve it for you or get it to the right people. That's pretty much what I have. But I will turn it over to Anthony Harrison, who will tell you a little more. Thanks.
Oh, hey, how you doing? So yeah, like Mason said, we kind of handle a lot of non-legislative activities. Um, again, an issue we had last year was unemployment. That was a big one. But we also again reach out to any state department, state agencies, DOT, DMV, Department of Health, Department of Financial Services, other state offices like the Controller's Office, the Attorney General's Office. Um, Also, I do handle veteran issues. One of the issues right now, I'm trying to help a woman with her getting her deceased father's military records. We also handle constituents who call about financial assistance and other things. Francis sort of touched on the merit scholarship. That was a constituent who sort of reached out to us. So it was pretty cool to see a constituent go from being reaching out to us to getting a bill passed. So that was pretty awesome. So that's pretty much all I have.
Wonderful. Thank you, Mason and Anthony, for sharing about the constituent services that you provide at Senator Brooks' office. At this moment, I would like to talk a little bit about community outreach. I've been coordinating a lot of these events from the community. During the pandemic, the office was able to accomplish a lot of different events, even though we weren't able to do what we usually do during the year. But, Senator Brooks was able to host 4 different flu shot events prior to the vaccines. So we were able to work together with Northwell as well as CVS Pharmacy. So we were able to have the Freeport Recreation in collaboration. They were able to have the mobile outside of the recreation. So it was really unique. They were able to administer about 100 vaccines at the Freeport Recreation, and other locations it was 50 or more. So you could see that we were able to host these activities at the Merrick Library. Also in Suffolk, the Copake Tanner Park, in partnership with Assemblywoman Kimberly Jean-Pierre and Town of Babylon Supervisor Rich Schaffer, and that was through CBS. And then the North Merrick Library, again, we had the mobile there with Northwell Hospital. So it was very successful, and we really were able to get a lot of vaccines in front, people to avoid getting sick during the that season. And Senator Brooks also hosted 5 blood drives with the New York Blood Center, and he was able to do that in collaboration with the Freeport Memorial Library. As you could see, he also was able to have one at the Freeport Recreation, again, in collaboration with the Freeport Mayor, Robert T. Kennedy. So we are really grateful that we were able to partner up with the New York Blood Center to bring, this important need in the community, because they were really short during the pandemic with blood. So they were really encouraging to really make it possible to have donors. So thank you for everybody that was able to donate blood. So next, I would like to talk about our next upcoming event. We are going to be hosting Senator Brooks' office, and along with other elected officials, National Night Out. And this is really important because it's a time where police and community, join together in partnership. And it's something that's a nationwide event, and it's designed to build stronger communities in partnership that promotes safe neighbors. So we're going to be having a lot of resources as well at that event, free food, music, and raffles. So we encourage you, if you're going to be close to the Freeport area, or if not, you're welcome to come as well. But it's going to be a very fun event. And thank you, Senator Brooks, for really having this vision to host all these events along with other elected officials. And we are also working to putting together other events that, we normally do every year, like the Golden Gathering, which is a senior resources event. But, just stay tuned. I encourage you to please go to Facebook, daily, whenever you can, because we have an amazing communication director and with Melody as well, that always update this information. So stay tuned and please always look out, because Senator Brooks was able to get a lot of resources out during the pandemic as well. He had a guide, where vaccines that people could go for vaccinations. So, it's very important that you connect so you could get to know about the resources in the District 8. So again, thank you. And it's my pleasure really to be able to work for the senator. At this moment, I would like to introduce to you Melody Janza. She's the External Relation Associate. And Melody will be discussing about the different webinar sessions that the senator had during the year. Melody, welcome and thank you.
Thank you, Lucia. Good evening, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here. I'm an external relations associate, but I mainly focus on social media outreach. And also during the pandemic, I assisted with planning the webinars and making sure that we were staying in touch with our communities. So just briefly, I wanted to talk about the work that we did during the pandemic and we continue to do. We realized that we wanted to make sure that we were communicating with our community, listening and finding out what was going on and the issues that were arising. So we formed a community outreach group. This group entails of 3 members so far. We have Jessica Fernandez, she's a census community specialist. We also have Daphne Irizarry, she's the president of the Long Island Latino Teachers Association, and Maria Jordan Awalam, she's a Freeport District Board of Education trustee. So as I mentioned, throughout the pandemic, the work group, we met every Monday and we discussed any pressing issues and topics that were trending within the community. As I'm sure you remember, during the pandemic, every week it was new updates, new restrictions. So we wanted to make sure that we were staying on top of everything and that we were providing any resources or information that may be useful to the community. So during these webinars, we invited guest speakers, experts to discuss these issues. And they were really key to make sure that we were addressing the needs of our community members. Additionally, many of our webinars were featured in a different language. As you see tonight, we are featuring this webinar in Spanish. So we were able to outreach to many community members and provide information in their languages. On the right side of your screen, you'll see where you can find our recordings. So you can still find our previous webinars on our Facebook page at Senator John Brooks, and also on our YouTube page. You can see the link there below, and you'll be able to see any of our past webinars and listen about the resources that we were able to provide. Here's just a brief list of some of the webinars that we provided. The big first one was the COVID-19 town hall. Basically, we just touched on all the different restrictions and the changes that were going on in the beginning of the pandemic. And then we kind of stemmed it into other pressing issues that were happening, such as veteran services and resources, mental health resources, some resources for students. We talked about services and resources for the disabled community. And we also talked about diversifying the workplace. We had an issues facing women webinar, which featured our Women of Distinction, Leslie Feinberg. And we also had, towards the end of the pandemic, we hosted a Black History and Women's History Month celebration. So the webinars and this technology really allowed us to continue to outreach to our community. And we're hoping that from there, we can stem into more in-person events. As Lucia mentioned, we're having an event coming up next month. So we hope to see you there. And lastly, as Lucia mentioned, be sure to follow our Facebook page, Instagram, Twitter to make sure that you stay updated. You can also sign up to our newsletter. You'll find the link right there, tinyurl.com/SD8 newsletter. And you'll be able to sign up and receive all our resources, events, any community stuff that is going on. And that's all I have. Thank you, Lucia.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Melody. I know the Senator Brooks, these were very webinars that were viewed by hundreds of people, over 400 of people that view this webinar. So it has really been very instrumental. So I encourage you, if you haven't had a chance to view these webinars, to go to Senator Brooks' Facebook page and you'll be able to see them there. Very important topics. At this moment, I would like to introduce to you Joe Agovino. He is the Director of Communications, and Joe will be talking a little bit about the internship program summaries that the Senator has had during this year. Thank you, Joe, and welcome.
Thank you, Lucia, and good evening, everybody. As Lucia said, I have the great privilege of being Senator Brooks' Communications Director. And when we early on during the pandemic, as everything was shutting down, we basically had to sit down and figure out how we were going to basically reinvent how we're going to do our outreach and how communicate with the community at large, especially during a time of crisis like that. And you've already heard about some of the options Melody just spoke about. One of the things that we did was start this webinar series. But another way that we decided to go was based on the idea that we were sure there were a lot of people who were stuck sitting at home with not much to do, but really wanted to be able to pitch in and help in some way, shape, or form. So we created an internship program, and we ended up with over 100 college and high school students from across the country, even as far as college students as far as away as Europe and Asia, who joined us in doing all kinds of community outreach as far as phone calls, emails, research, things along those lines. It started out, we did tens of thousands of phone calls initially to senior citizens in the district to make sure that the resources, they were aware and had access to the resources that were available to them. And we moved it beyond then. From that point on, we decided to turn it into more of a, to shape it a little bit more. And we ended up doing, turning into research projects and different types of communications and community outreach programs. We, for instance, we broke them down into several different categories, and they would do research and capstone projects and made presentations, policy presentations, a lot of which went into some of the legislation that Francis mentioned earlier and that the senator will be talking about shortly. So from there, we broke it down into a sort of a college schedule. So we're doing it by semesters, and currently we're in the summer. We're in a summer program that is just beginning. Focusing right now on community outreach, we have over 60 interns right now, spending at least a day of their week doing community outreach to District 8 residents. We focus currently we're focusing on voter registration and voter participation. We are also continuing to do outreach on different issues that people are that are still identifying with the pandemic. Next slide, please. They, as said earlier, they participate in legislative research, and we have them currently broken down into several work groups that are important to the senator. They spend significant time researching the issues and solutions and possible solutions that are facing the residents. Focus keys are election reform, promoting increased diversity in key public institutions, solving local environmental issues. All of this gets sort of, again, put together, funneled down, and presented, and it goes into various forms of either outreach or legislative preparation. We have the great honor of this program has, as I said, sort of goes by semester. We have a lot of recurring people who did their semester and thought the work was rewarding enough that they wanted to do it again. In fact, we took two of them who had done a phenomenal job in the past and put them in charge of a veterans research team, that specified team, who are doing right now all different kinds of work into future legislation that we'll be proposing soon. So there's a lot of areas and opportunities for participation. The intern team will also spend time on written communications. They will help Senator Brooks keeping constituents informed of what is happening in their government and their communities. They aid in drafting a weekly newsletter. We do email blasts, creating social media content. The focus of these communications is typically highlighting community events, encouraging civic participation, informing people of the senator's legislative priorities, all different types of stuff going on out there. Next slide, please. That's just the general overview. We have, as I said, currently we have over 60 interns, mainly on the college level, some high school students as well. We are always open to working with more. The program itself is ongoing, and proud to say that it's had a positive effect in both in our work and in our community. So thank you very much for this opportunity to tell you a little bit about it, and I will pass it back to Lucia.
Great. Thank you, Joe. Wonderful work you're doing with the interns, as well as Jen. Again, at this moment, I would like to welcome Senator Brooks again. He will be going over some key piece of legislations more into detail. So welcome, Senator Brooks, and I'll turn it over to you. Thank you.
And just as an overall general statement, we're trying to cover a lot of topics today. And I also wanted you to be familiar with the outstanding staff we have and their involvement in what's going on. In Albany itself this past year, the pandemic obviously affected how we did business. We actually operated while we were in the state capitol. We operated by Zoom. Our attendance in the chamber was restricted to 6 people at any one time. A lot of the legislation, as you can recognize, a lot of the discussion that was had was associated to the pandemic and all of the different factors responding to what was going on there. So it was an interesting session at times. We were attending the sessions from home via Zoom. And as the staff had said, we recognize that the town hall meetings and things that we used to have were not possible in the pandemic. And I think the webinar program in particular was exceptionally effective, allowing us to address a lot of issues. Many of the seminars, because it filtered from Zoom to other electronic distribution systems, we had significant attendance, outstanding presenters, and I think the ability to give to the community a great deal of information. Joe had mentioned that we have the intern program where individuals come from literally all over the world. And just as an indication of what happens, every once in a while we have a call where it's almost a question and answer period from the interns on anything they want to ask me governmentally or otherwise. We had a call the other night, and during the call, one of the girls in the call, she was having significant changes in her facial expressions. And looked to be greatly upset. And she was actually going through the earthquake that they had in California. She was out in California, and as she was on the call, she was going through the earthquake and letting us know that her desk and everything else was shaking. So it really is a program that reaches out all over. And we as a country are exceptionally lucky with the interest that many of our young people have in government and their desire to become involved. The whole idea of this actually stemmed several years ago. A group of 8th grade students from Freeport High School came in during the spring break, and they talked to us about the concerns they had with vaping. And they really had some great ideas. So we worked with the teachers and others in Freeport, and the students actually were given an opportunity to write a bill to deal with vaping. They actually wrote 8 bills, and several of them were introduced, and 2 of them actually got to the floor. It demonstrates how keenly aware the young people in our country are, and that led to this program, and they're doing a great job helping us research information, and we're going to continue to build on that. So what I would like to do now is just review a couple things that we're working on, and have a discussion on some of the concerns we have. One of the bills that's actually been around probably for 20 years, and I have been the key sponsor for the last 5 years since I've been in the Senate, is a bill that would allow our volunteer fire departments to recapture the expenses associated with the medical care and ambulance services that they are providing to our communities. And this is a big issue here in Long Island and many of the areas across our state. Legislation was passed a number of years ago that allowed, and if you remember, in Nassau County with the ambulances from the police department, they were in a position where they could bill or recover their costs. That was approved, as was the ability for volunteer ambulance services to provide the services and recover the money. The costs associated with this for all of us is generally covered in our health insurance plans. And then when you're dealing with automobile accidents, on your no-fault coverage on your auto policy. But the volunteer fire service has always been excluded. As we know, this past year was a challenging year with the pandemics, and I know in my community, while our department had a rule that for the most part, us older guys were not to get on the trucks for the pandemic or the virus-related calls, we had a great deal of members that were suiting up and going on a call that would require a tremendous commitment and exposure. Ambulances were being cleaned for two and more hours to protect the community from that situation. And it was clear, once again, that the demand on the volunteer fire departments across our state was significant. And there really is no logical reason why they can't recover the services. It's the only agency, New York is the only state the volunteer fire departments can't recover. So we passed that bill in the Senate the last 3 years. We believed we had the votes to pass it this year. Unfortunately, the bill was not brought to a vote in the Senate. And there is a big push statewide right now to try to get the final approval on this legislation. It has the potential of recovering back to the local fire districts and agencies $100 million a year in expenses. Now, the fire departments pay for the services they provide, the equipment they need through their budgets, which you pay for by the property taxes that are levied for the fire service. Our hope is that we would get this bill passed. The districts can recover those funds. They would have the opportunity to either reduce taxes, increase the medical services and equipment that's being provided, or a combination of both. So right now there is a real effort across the state to bring this bill before the Assembly, which I believe there is enough votes there to pass the legislation. So I just wanted to bring you up to speed on this particular bill. We're working hard on it. We're going to try to bring it to a vote in both houses in January. And I think, you know, the demand for medical services has increased greatly, particularly as our population gets older and older. The level of service that's being provided is outstanding. And it's an opportunity for communities to recover some of those costs. Again, your health insurance premiums are paying for this coverage. And right now we're not able to recover those expenses. So we're changing that bill. Next slide, please. Okay, so I covered all the issues on that slide. I'm sorry. So go to the next one. Okay, so next we want to talk about probably one of the biggest issues you all have. Your taxes are too high, and the driving factor of those taxes is education. So we want to have a general discussion first on the funding of public education in our state and what we're trying to do to kind of equalize what's happening to us. Oversimplified, we fund education by three principal means. One is state aid, which is allocated to the school districts based on formulas that were established by the state legislature and principally funded by means of income taxes. Then we have residential property taxes, which is a tax that's levied on the homes in a school district, and that levy is based on the assessed value of those homes. And then finally, commercial property taxes, which is a tax that is levied by the school district on the commercial property in the school district based on the assessed value of that property. This system really results in some very significant inequities from one community to the next, particularly in communities that have limited commercial property bases or limited state aid granted. So there's an overdependence on the use of residential property taxes. Next slide, please. There's a big assumption that's made in the use of residential property taxes. There's the belief that the value of your house, the market value of your house, is reflective of your financial condition or your ability to pay taxes. Now, that assumption doesn't take into consideration the fact that many, many people have significant mortgages on their home. For example, you can have two homes with an assessed value of $500,000, one next to the other. In one home, the homeowner, for sake of discussion, has owned the home for a long, long time. They own the home free and clear, and they're not making any mortgage payments. In the other home, let's say it's a new couple, they just got married, and they have a $450,000 mortgage on their home. So they have a significant expense they're paying to stay in the home, yet they are taxed equally because the consideration is based on the assessed value of the home. When we come to our seniors, we know that many of our seniors are in fixed income or limited incomes. The value of the house in many cases is high, and in this economy is appreciating. The tax levy that they are receiving becomes more and more difficult as it increases because, again, the basis is the assessed value of the home. Next slide, please. Recently, as we know from the papers, houses here on Long Island are selling in a matter of days and with significant increases in value. Now, when we look at state aid formulas, among the considerations that are taken is the wealth of the community. And one of the things we look at is the value of our property. So we could be, if we don't take the right steps, facing significant increases because you and I are richer, not because we're really richer, but the house is worth more. So we have got to get everybody to understand that the assessed value of the house is not truly reflective of your financial condition. In many school districts, we're in a situation where those districts do not have very much commercial property. My community, Seaford, and many of the communities in this state, in this district, do not have large commercial property bases. In Seaford, using that as an example, only 10% of our educational funding comes from commercial property tax base. We don't have a commercial property tax. The formulas that we use to generate the state aid or Seaford and Wantor and a number of other communities in our district, we get about 20% of the funding for education from state aid. That leaves 70% of the burden of funding education being placed on the homeowners. We are exceptionally dependent on the use of residential property taxes. And that does several things. Number one, it increases the overall cost of home ownership. As you know, several years ago, we made changes in the federal tax laws. And once upon a time, going back to Abraham Lincoln, whatever taxes you paid to the federal government were always fully deductible. The tax laws passed several years ago capped the deduction for state and local taxes at $10,000. What happens now for those whose taxes are $10,000, and for many, if not most of us, our school taxes are greater than $10,000, only that $10,000 cap is allowed to be deducted. Whatever you pay above $10,000 in taxes, in property taxes and state taxes, is no longer deductible on a federal return. And you are taxed again on that money. So where we are, for so many of us, as our taxes go back, is the penalty that's now in the federal tax laws, referred to as the SALT tax, results in you paying additional state taxes. Now, this has a tremendous adverse impact on all of us. And then again, we have our seniors who are on fixed income. So we have to reduce the dependence, next slide, please, on residential property taxes. So what I am proposing, and I'm going to use Seaford and Wantor, they're almost identical numbers as examples. In those two communities, again, the total residential commercial property tax base pays 10% of the cost, and the state aid is 20%. The legislation that I am proposing will place a cap on the use of property taxes at 50% of the total school district spending. So for sake of discussion, you lived in a district that has a $100 million school budget. If it's Seaford or Wantor using the current numbers, we would be paying $700,000 of that via property taxes. By putting the cap at 50%, we're now paying $500,000. That results in a 30% reduction in your property taxes. How are we going to fund the difference? We're going to fund it through additional state aid. So we will see a reduction in your property taxes, generally using those two districts as an example, 30%. And you will see an increase in state aid, which is spread all across the state, principally based on income, and give us some tax relief. The cost of this program that we went out is about $1.4 billion a year. And it is purely tax relief. The money is credited based on 3-year history of where the percentage was of dependence on residential property taxes. And the credit is applied after the school budget is passed, so it's 100% tax relief. It doesn't allow a district to spend more. Oh, we got more money, let's spend it. No, you're capped at what you're spending, but the funding moves to funding source of state aid as opposed to property taxes. Now, again, using the districts, it's about 30% relief. I'm also working on legislation for our seniors to get additional relief by providing a reduction in your assessed value. We're working right now on the proposal that would be 30%, recognizing that you're not really using the services of the school district any longer, and you're in a situation where your income is limited. Next slide, please. Okay, we're into New York Water. So this bill was introduced with the pandemic. We had a lot of discussion on it. We couldn't get it into the proposal. There's a great deal of interest on it. It's been endorsed by a number of county executives across the state, and we'll be working on it going into the fall to push the passage of that legislation next year and put us in a position where there's more equality in school funding. Right now, we have districts here on Long Island and across the state that, from a commercial property tax standpoint, get more than half their educational costs paid that way. So we need to recognize that in reality, the value of your home is not a true or real indication of your ability to make payments and taxes. And we've got to change the way we fund education. So we'll be working on that some more, and we'll get that out as time goes on. Next, for many of us, our favorite, no, I didn't mean, leave that slide down. I gotta, one of our hot button issues is New York American Water. As you know, New York American Water right now is, it has received a proposal from Liberty to purchase the company. This is under discussion. I have introduced legislation which has passed and is waiting to go before the governor. We'll be talking about the bills shortly with the governor's office. Jim Gorin also passed a bill. I believe our rates from New York American Water are excessive, number one. I believe we would be in a much better position if we had a municipality program as opposed to a private company. To give you just a glimpse of how different charges are, and I think most of you know, I am a firefighter, so I'm kind of interested in that cost. Fire hydrants, a critical part of fire protection. New York American Water charges the fire districts $699 per hydrant. Suffolk County Water Authority charges $160. Massapequa Water Authority, who obviously is in Massapequa, charges even less than that. We looked at Massapequa Water Authority and New York American Water. There's over a 500% increase in the difference of the cost of those programs. This is an example of what we've allowed this company to do by not managing the expenses effectively. New York American Water, when you discuss rates with them, they'll tell you that their rates are driven between 37 and 57% of their rate is the result of taxes that are charged. In reality, in our state, only 4% of the water services in our state are subject to taxes at all. I'm working and introducing legislation that water, next slide, please. That water, which is a natural resource, and life is dependent on the ability to have water available, should not be subject to tax at all. And I'm going to introduce legislation that outlaws taxing water as a natural resource. You know, we've got to get real with what we're seeing here. These charges are excessive. I believe the bill that we've proposed has the path to allow us to develop a municipally run program. I know if those of you that may have access to Newsday, in the Point the other day, they mentioned that my bill didn't include funding for the proposal to look at a municipal program. Legislation doesn't provide funding. You'll often put a number in a bill legislation so someone knows the cost. Legislation does not provide the funding. The funding is provided in the budget. What my legislation does that gives the pathway to get this done. What we will discuss with the second floor is the things that have to be done and what has to be determined. And if we get agreement, hopefully the governor will sign that bill. So, this is an open, active, and ongoing discussion. I will tell you that I met many times with the management of New York American Water, both the current president and the prior president. I've also had discussions with Liberty. This is a top priority to me. We have got to be in a position where we're treated fairly. I think the Public Service Commission can do a better job. So this item is an open discussion, active, and we will be keeping you up to speed on this one. Next slide. Wyandanch School District. Wyandanch School District is a district that has faced significant financial challenges. And I picked this out because other school districts have had real challenges. I will tell you that, in my opinion, the school district was run poorly. I don't think some of the people in the district had the right experience. But Wyandanch itself is one of, if not the poorest community in Suffolk County. There's no commercial property tax base there. It's a school district that was seeing a tremendous increase in student enrollment as a result of immigration. And it actually was the fastest growing school district in the state of New York. Myself and some of the other legislators that represent Wyandanch met with the school board on some things. We didn't like answers we were getting. We were not getting the kind of information we need. We asked that this start to be looked at. As we continued to look at that, we didn't like what we're hearing. We went to the Commissioner of Education and requested that a monitor be placed in the district who would work with the administration, the school board, the superintendent, to take a look at what was happening in this district, maybe to take a look backwards, which we were doing, to see if there was additional state aid they were entitled to that they didn't file. Yes, this is there are a number of districts in the state that had challenges financially, and there was no methodology to do that. In the end, Hempstead School District was also in the mix. We passed legislation that created a monitor. It is now the method that the state is using for districts that are in trouble. They're bringing monitors in to give guidance and improve the financial management and the long-term economic goals and other management goals for the school district. I can tell you in Wyandanch, we're getting good results. We're moving in the right direction. So I bring Wyandanch up more for the point to say that there are ways we can solve problems. And part of it is making sure that people have the tools, in this case, the training and education, to get the job done. So I think Wyandanch is moving in the right direction. There are other things we have to continue to work on. But basically what I'm saying here is we have to identify problems and then honestly look to work on them. And that's what we're trying to do. Next slide. Okay, so that's That's it. You asked a lot of questions, the folks early. Mike Reed, my chief of staff, has worked on those questions. He's going to review those answers to you, if you will, and then we're going to open it up for some additional questions. I realize tonight we've tried to cover a lot of stuff. I wanted you to understand just how much is being done by the staff, the things they do. We didn't cover every bill that we have. We exceed 100, and each year there's about 10,000 bills that are introduced. Some of them year after year after year after year. But we do have some bills that we're working very closely on. As Francis has said, the Dwyer program in particular is an exceptionally successful program for helping veterans on a peer-to-peer basis, both men and women. Francis didn't mention, but for New York State, I think is almost the last state to actually now have a military state cemetery. We passed that legislation. The governor signed that to help our veterans that financially maybe don't have a place to go. We passed that legislation. We're doing a lot of legislation in terms of veterans issues, firematic issues, educational funding issues. We're looking at a lot of opportunities from an environmental standpoint right now. We're working on some very interesting projects. The Grumman plume we're actively working on, and we were talking with some scientists the other day on that. So there's a lot in play. Certainly the past year has been very, very different than normal because of the pandemic, the inability to meet with people. And we were in a situation where many decisions had to be made to put funding in areas maybe that wasn't really anticipated. We know the next year we've got to do everything we can to return the economy to the norm. We need to help businesses stay afloat. We did a great deal of work with the school districts to try to be able to adjust to an internet environment so the students can continue to learn. We know in many areas in our state, and here even on Long Island, communities do not have enough access to the internet. That's all stuff we have to work on. I'm not today trying to say, look, we solved all the problems. We didn't. And it was a difficult year. And we're mindful of what's there, and we're working on those problems. And we're trying to reach out and keep you involved. We're putting work groups together. If anybody has interest in working on anything in particular, they should drop us a note, and we'll try to get them involved. So, my objective today really was to give you an overview, not force you to listen to me talk for a couple of hours, but to let some other people tell you what they've been doing. And I will tell you, in particular, the webinar programs were just tremendous assist. Massapequa School Districts at one point wanted to meet on some things that were happening associated with the virus. We were able to basically give them the system to work for so they could have a town hall meeting, which everybody could have access to. So I think some things with the pandemic, we understand we can do certain things electronically now fairly well. We also know that we're not up to speed in many of our districts with our computer-related technology, and we have to work on that. So for right now, I'm going to stop. I'm going to let Mike cover the questions that came in, and then we're going to give you an opportunity for any new questions that may have. Mike?
All right, very good. Thank you, Senator. And again, Michael Reed, I'm the Senator's Chief of Staff, and it is definitely an honor and a privilege to have such a talented staff working here in our district office. I'm going to go through a number of the questions that were submitted prior to the program beginning today. I do believe we have a couple questions that may have come in afterwards that we'll get to things if we can. But in the meantime, we'll kind of take things one at a time and see where we go. So the first question we got was, what's happening with the Grumman plume, and who's really overseeing this whole thing? Well, the oversight for the project itself really falls to New York State Department of Environmental Conservation. They are overseeing the project. The cleanup of this is going to take quite a bit of time. I don't believe that they've actually started the cleanup process yet, but it is in its beginning stages, and again, it will be a great benefit to our district and to all of Long Island to see this cleaned up. And again, there's additional information if you'd like to get it. There's a website up, and I'm sure that it can be put up into the chat. So next, please. Okay, next one is, are there any possibilities or considerations to engage more mental health professionals? And this is talking about COVID vaccines. So interesting question. Really not up to the New York State Legislature. That is a question for New York State Department of Health. They have a vaccine distribution and implementation task force, which oversees all such areas. I know there is a huge media push to get people vaccinated. I cannot say strongly enough that if you are not vaccinated, to please get vaccinated. And if anyone out there would like assistance in getting a COVID vaccine, please contact our office. Okay, next up. Question, how will you address voter suppression? Clearly, voter suppression is a major issue. Thankfully, we are living in New York, where your ability to vote is very, very strongly protected. One of the things that was recently done was Senate 517, which it's a bill which will expand mail-in ballots and really the no excuse mail-in balloting, and also would allow for same-day voter registration. Both of these are now going to be referendums that will be on the November ballot this year. So all of you watching today, and please encourage all of your friends and family members to go out and vote for these things, so we can continue to work with our public and protect your rights to cast your vote and to elect the representatives who you think are going to do the best job speaking for you up in Albany and in Washington, D.C. Okay, thank you. Next up. Question came in, what is not being done about the poor water quality in Merrick? Well, we know the water is very expensive in Merrick, but to the best of our knowledge, there is no water quality issue that is going on in Merrick. Indeed, from time to time, there will be very localized issues. So if there is construction that is going on in your street, if the fire hydrants are perhaps being flushed, or if indeed there is unfortunately some type of a fire suppression operation in the community, that may sometimes stir up some sediment. But overall, while the water is very expensive, it is indeed very good quality water to the best of our knowledge. However, if you have any questions about that, there is additional information out there from New York State Department of Health, Nassau County Department of Health, and the federal EPA. All three levels of government constantly monitor this. And New York American Water will also have the water quality report up on their website, although I don't have their information up on the slide right now. Okay, next up, please. And again, this is these questions kind of demonstrate the wide variety of issues that we address here in the district office. So this constituent asked, why don't the North Merrick schools have busing for children? Well, the North Merrick School District has never had busing for children. School buses are required if students are living 2 miles or more away from the school. North America, we are very fortunate. We have several elementary schools in the North Merrick community. No child in North Merrick has to travel more than 2 miles to get to school. So that's why there are no buses. There could be, and that is really a decision that would be made by the local community and by the school board. So if the voters in the North Merrick School District would like to have busing, please reach out to your school board, ask them to put a resolution before the community, and the community can decide what they would like to do. Okay, next up. Okay. Also, another question related to school busing, although this one's slightly different. I'm a parent of a severely disabled. I am a parent with a severe disability. New York needs a law requiring schools to provide school transportation for children of parents who are disabled. Do you think that this will happen in the 2022 legislative session? This is probably one of the very first pieces of legislation that Senator Brooks introduced back in 2016, when he was first coming into office. The bill would allow school districts the option to do this. The bill currently is and has been sitting in the Education Committee in both the Senate and the Assembly, and it has not moved out of committee. So again, we are continuing to push it forward in the Senate. We'll see what happens. I can't predict what will happen in the next year, but hopefully this will come to the floor. Okay, next up. Are there any homeowner assistance programs available to help with mortgage payments? Surprisingly, the answer is yes. New York State has the New York State Mortgage Assistance Program. The website is up there. The program offers 0% interest loans for up to $80,000 if you are eligible. Funds generally can be used for just about any purpose to help with a mortgage, pay off if you are in arrears, settle other debts, anything that really helps you protect you from foreclosure. Again, this is a program designed for low and moderate income homeowners, and you would have to make less than $53,000 a year in order to qualify for this program. Okay, next up. What bills have been passed to support? I think we jumped there. Can we go back? There we go. What bills have been passed to support people with developmental disabilities? Well, the senator has, as a member of the Committee on Disabilities, the senator did vote on 26 pieces of legislation that were taken up by the committee, and all of those were passed. Of particular interest is Bill 7107, which would encourage a less restrictive alternative to guardianship by promoting more autonomy to individuals with disability. So that is a bill that would really help our community that is looking for more self-direction out there. It helps formalize the decision-making process and promotes a more person-centered care. So we are very happy to be supportive of that bill. Okay, next up. Why is crossbow hunting not in? Why was crossbow hunting not included in the last budget? So really, there is a question out there, particularly for some of our hunters who are getting up there in years and have found that using a traditional bow to go bow hunting, and indeed, as time goes on, sometimes it gets a little bit harder to use, and they would like to be able to use a basically a mechanical bow or a crossbow. So the Senate Bill 1721 is an active bill. It was actually introduced by Senator Gallivan. It is in the Environmental Conservation Committee, and we do expect that it will move forward, or possibly may move forward when we go back in January. So let's see what happens with that one. Okay, next up. Will you vote for the New York State Restore Mother Nature Bond Act this November? So this bond act, actually, this has already passed both houses in the New York State Legislature. So this is now going to go before the community as on the ballot in November. We do encourage everyone to support the bond act. This will invest $33 billion in New York State to really help harden the resiliency from future storms. We know that living here in the South Shore, that's something we critically need, and passing this bond act would be of a great benefit to all of us here on Long Island. So yes, Senator Brooks helped pass that in the Senate, and but now we need your help to pass this in the elections in November. Okay, next up. What is the senator's position on bail? Obviously, a huge topic, and for many people, a very sensitive issue. Just a quote from an earlier press release from Senator Brooks: "I am aware that the law has sought to address some very real injustices, but it has absolutely failed in its execution. To put quite simply, it should have been done better. The purpose of bail reform should be to reduce the number of people jailed for nonviolent crimes while awaiting trial, simply because they cannot afford to pay for bail." Bail reform, this was done in 2019. Clearly, there are some things out there that still need to be worked on, but that's why we're up in Albany, continuing to represent our community, and we know that there are a number of people who would like to see some changes made. So again, please continue to contact our office with your thoughts and opinions on what you would like to see changed in the bail laws. Okay, coming up next. Okay, next slide, please. What is the status of Senate 4599? Senator actually touched on that a few minutes ago, talking about tax reform. 4599 is a bill that would help persons 65 years of age or over with local school and property taxes. Unfortunately, this bill has yet to attract any members of the Assembly to introduce a same as. When we talk about a same as bill, to pass any legislation in New York State, identical pieces of legislation have to be introduced and passed in both the New York State Senate and the Assembly. So while 4599 is an active bill in the Senate, there is no Assembly same as. So without an Assembly partner, this unfortunately is not moving forward anywhere at the moment. So if anyone from the Assembly is watching, we'd love to have you come on as a co-sponsor. Okay, next up. Okay, another bill question, Senate 740 and Assembly 5499. What is going on with this? So this is particularly a bill focused on women's issues. The bill is currently on the agenda in the Women's Committee. It would authorize, basically it's a study bill, and it would study the impact of pregnancy services here in New York State. The proposal does seem very reasonable, and we're looking forward to reviewing the bill in its final form once it comes out of committee. The committee process, many bills go in one form and come out in another, so sometimes it's hard to comment on a bill until we actually see the bill coming out of the committee, and once it comes out of committee, it will be considered by the full Senate. So again, another bill that we're continuing to watch, and we'll see what happens. Okay, next up. Okay, so I think that kind of does it for questions we've gotten in advance. Again, it hopefully showcases the wide variety of issues that are raised to our district office and to all of our staff members here. So I see we have a couple questions coming up in the chat box, and I will turn it back to our moderators to address those questions. Thank you, everybody.
Joe, if you're on, if you could take those questions. I'm not sure if you're able to see those.
I can see them. Give me 1 second here. Good evening, everybody. So we have a question. what are the requirements for enhanced star exemption? Income and age requirements. Francis, is that perhaps something you can address?
Yeah, I'll take a look and dig it up real quick.
All right. While we're waiting for that,
I just wanted to slide in. I realized I was muted there. The recovery aspects of certain things and what we're trying to do with the tax relief, that's all going to be the parts of discussions that we're talking about as we revise and go after these bills. So some of the concerns that you have, please recognize that while we had committee meetings, they were different meetings. They were done by Zoom. So some discussions weren't totally had during this session, just as a practical matter. I think you're going to see a very active year for those folks. If anybody that's listening in, if there's concerns on certain bills and things that we didn't address here, or if you have ideas yourself, please feel free to send them in. Understand the normal process up in Albany we would be meeting in these things and having ongoing discussions. This year was very different. We were having discussions on items that were moving forward and a lot while we moved a lot of bills. There were many that, because of circumstances associated in many cases with the pandemic, those discussions didn't happen. So I think we're going to see even much more an active year next year. So some of these questions we may not be able to answer, only because all of the research and discussion haven't been gone, because one of the problems we have up in Albany is the bills that we are considering. You're researching and going through and discussing with your staff and others, and at the close of session on some days that was hundreds of bills. So it's like I said, there's 10,000 give or take bills issued each year. You certainly don't know what's in every one of them, and our attention is brought to bills as they're moving forward and going to committee votes. So I'm not trying to make an excuse on that. I'm trying to be honest with you that I will tell you there's no member that knows what's in all 10,000 bills, and all 10,000 bills didn't go to committee. Okay.
thank you, Senator. Okay, and then we are currently sort of thank you for that answer, and we are currently looking into further responses. And we had a question from Mr. James Camarda about the military buyback from the Long Island Railroad. Francis is actually working on a response right now for that, and just to say that this bill remains a priority for the senator, and it's been in discussion with the Assembly to find a mutual solution so that it can pass in both houses. That is to say that it's still a priority, James, and we're still working on it. All right. And Ermin, as far as income and age requirements, we are going to look that up, and we will respond to you in an email form, because we are just coming up right now on our 90-minute milestone here, and therefore we do have to bring this webinar to a close. If you have further questions, we do ask that you reach out to us in our office via the email or the phone number. Melody, if you can, thank you very much. And then we make it our business to make sure we respond to every inquiry that comes our way. I want to thank you very, very much for taking the time to join us tonight and discuss these issues, and look forward to seeing you and speaking with you again another time. Senator, did you want to say any closing remarks before we left?
Yeah, thank you. I know there was a lot here. I know some things were not covered in the bills and everything else. We wanted to have an opportunity to speak with everybody, give you a general idea with what's happening. I hope you understand that as the pandemic changed your life, it changed our life. We are actively right now working on a number of bills for next year to address some things. Many of our residents called on certain issues associated with tax relief. Look, bottom line is this: I recognize two things. We are overly dependent on the use of residential property taxes to fund education. The system is overly dependent on the homeowners. We see the homeowner almost as someone with a wallet that just doesn't stop ending. I often say, you know, we recognize these folks, many people. You know, your house is appreciating. That's fine, but your income source isn't, and you can't go down to the receiver of taxes and give them the window from the bedroom as a payment. We've got to stop the overdependence. We've got to be fairer with the way we fund education. We have to get the SALT tax removed. New York State, prior to the SALT tax, sent to the federal government about $48 billion, more than any other state. We were the largest donor state. The SALT tax increased that contribution by about $15 billion more. New York is not getting a fair share right now from the federal government. We have to repeal that tax cap, and we have to change the way we fund education to a much fairer proposal. The proposal we have right now to cap at 50% is step one. The proposal for reducing the assessed value of seniors' property is also another step. But we have to come up with a much fairer way of funding education. And we have to stop the overtaxing of property. In many ways, for many of us, our wealth is in our home. We don't have any wealth tax, but sometimes I think the way we tax homes, it's almost like we're taxing the wealth. So we have a lot of work to do. We're open to discussions with you. Again, my objective tonight was to give you an overview of a lot of different things that were out there this year. In some ways, what we were doing was invisible because of the fact that we couldn't meet with people. We're going to continue these webinars. If people would have subject matters they'd like to be addressed on a webinar, send it in. They've really been on a schedule with about every 2 to 3 weeks. We're having a webinar on something. If people have ideas, you have that. We do have a weekly newsletter. If you want to get that information, send it in. And if there's an issue or a concern or a problem that you don't think is being fully addressed, give us a call, and we'll see what we can do. But tonight, I wanted you to get an overview of what we were doing, to meet some of the people that you talked to on the phone, and let them take some credit for the tremendous job they did. Like all of us in this pandemic, the staff worked both in the office and from home. Calls to the office for them were transferred to their home phone, and they got on the phone, and they worked for the hours, whatever hours they needed to resolve your problems. Not every problem is solved. Many people got real assistance on issues about unemployment insurance and other things. I think the pandemic showed us many things. People with disabilities in particular face unique challenges. We've got to do a better thing there. We recognize that childcare is a big issue in this state. That's why we put the money for the pre-K programs. We've got to do things there. And reaching out and communicating people is important, and that's why we're doing what we're doing tonight. So I know we had restrictions on the time, and we'll say goodnight if you will, but you know, any other issues or concerns you have, send it to us, and we'll get back to you. And I thank you all for participating. I think you know, we're very fortunate in this country when we do it right, that government is the participation of all the people. And I think I enjoy the opportunities to speak with people one-on-one. It's a little more difficult on the internet because you're talking to a screen and you can't see people's reactions. But you know, our effort tonight was to try to get a broad scope of information to you. I think the staff has done that. Certainly, we didn't touch every bill and every question, but you know, we'll probably do this again. So thank you all, and be safe out there. You know, we still have different challenges to take, and I realize some people are having real challenges right now economically because of things. If you're having difficulty, give us a call. See if we can find ways to help you or create legislation where we have a number of people in a situation to address it. So again, to my staff, I say thank you. To all of you that participated, I say thank you. And look forward to meeting and speaking with you again. Thank you all, and good night.
Thank you, Senator, and thank you everyone that joined us tonight. And once again, if you do have more questions that weren't able to be addressed tonight, please reach out to us directly at our office. Thank you. Have a great night, everybody, and enjoy your weekend.